Oi,
Mate.
everyone. How we doing, mate? Always a pleasure, Ken. Look, we've nearly made it to the end of the week. Hope it's been a good week for you, Ken. People in the chat, people watching on catch up. Uh, there's been no Arsenal lackluster performance this week, so hopefully it's been a little bit better this week than the last. So as you can see, people, it's a new show. We're going to be getting various guests on, and we're starting with the absolute legend himself, Kenny Ken. We're going to specifically talk about top Gooners here, with power-hungry narcissist Mikel and the bubble of delusion that he's created. I call the Mikel Matrix around this club, which I believe is a massive problem. We will get into it, and then little bit of general chit chat after, and then we'll wrap it up. But before I start, welcome to my guest, Sir Kenny Ken. How are we doing, my man?
I'm all good. It's nice to have a break from the Premiership because the games get really emotional in terms of like how we invest in the team and we're not playing well at the moment. The results haven't gone our way since the last international break. We've only won since the last international break. The last win we had was against. We haven't won since the last international break.
2 draws, 2 defeats.
Yeah, the only game we've
league.
won is Preston. So from Bournemouth up until Chelsea, not one win, and hence the fact that Liverpool running away with it. But the good thing about the international break as well, you can enjoy England a bit or ignore England. They've got some big games, not against Greece and the Republic of Ireland, but in terms of Arsenal, the Arsenal news is Odegaard is saying that Arsenal did not pressure him into withdrawing from the Norwegian national squad, and no Rice and no Saka in the England national squad. So that has to be pays dividends. But as you know, I'm a big fan of international football, and in terms of international football, I don't particularly like players that pull out, but I do understand at this stage of the season why they're doing it.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. So look, just before we get into it, Ken, I must totally confess. So my online footprint goes a lot longer than just being in people's chats and commenting and starting my own YouTube. I actually was a massive fan of yours when you was on a certain other channel for a long time.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, honestly, yeah, I've never had the chance to say it to you, and then now's a chance. So for some years later to have you sort of on a channel that I've just started up is it's a buzzing thing for me, Ken. I've always been a massive fan of everything that you've said, so it's absolutely buzzing that you've popped on the show and said hello. Do you know what I mean? For a chat.
It's my pleasure because I enjoy talking to fans who support the same clubs as me, because that's how it should be. Because previously, before social media, if someone supported the same football club as you, you just thought, right, you felt relaxed in that person's company. You got on with that person, and you felt right. We got a kindred spirit, but social media has shown that that's not the case. I think what it is with social media is, people have different opinions. People have different opinions than the manager. First Arsene, and the manager that's slightly dividing the club is Mikel. But the fact is that it's nice to talk to normal fans, because I look at nice meet. Good. It was a pleasure to meet you, Vic. And I would say one thing and one thing only is that remember one thing, we all start for fans, no matter how well you're doing, how well your YouTube channel's doing, how many of spin-offs you got from YouTube. Always remember one thing is that the reason why your YouTube channel is successful is because people subscribe to you, people watch you, and these are people who like I said, have made you. So you should never forget that. Never forget that. If someone asks for a picture, give them a picture. If someone wants to chat, give them a chat. If someone says something you don't agree with, have a talk to them. Find them. If they're not abusing you, have a conversation. If they're abusing you, then obviously you act accordingly.
Off your pop. Yeah. No. Do you know what? Just touching on that as well. Yeah, for those in the chat and watching on catch up, about a month ago, I actually popped down to see you, didn't I, Ken? I sent you a message on Instagram and said, I wanted to pop down and say hello, lower tier on the North Bank. And listen, I shook this legend's hands, people. Yeah. And I'm telling you, my right hand never quite recovered, Ken. I'm telling you, because the second you reached out with your right hand and shook mine, it absolutely suffocated it, mate. I'm telling you.
Well, you didn't
felt like
speak.
shaking a little toddler's hand for you, honestly. It just
No,
wrapped around there and engulfed it.
you got to talk to my wife, because my wife says that I got a handshake of a dead fish, that I barely touch people's hands. So you need to tell her that and let her know, because a lot of people don't. She doesn't believe that for 1 minute.
Mate, it wrapped around my little hand. Honestly, I just thought, Jesus Christ! I shook it, and I'm sure your fingers are touching your wrist on the other way around. Honestly, yeah, it's madness. But it was a massive pleasure to meet you. But listen, I want to sort of get things started, 'cause there's a few sort of questions I want to sort of ask you, Ken, and I want to sort of pick that phenomenal IQ of yours. So like you've been going to the Arsenal for a long time. That's
Yes.
absolutely undebatable. So one of the things I wanted to ask, like back in the 80s, back in the 90s, maybe even the early sort of noughties for them sort of years, have you ever experienced like an equivalent version of these top Gooners, that sort of we see today?
No, not at all. There was none of them about. There was none about. Don't, because the other day when we were in the clock end, we all started in the North Bank. Some people started junior Gunners, and some people started in the clock end. Don't get me wrong. There are times when I've seen one guy turn around and have a go at people who are having a go at a player. Sometimes players will have a go at Dennis Bergkamp. There were times when we used to have go at Perry Groves, and there'll be the odd person go, "Oh, why don't you just be quiet? If he wears a red shirt, you should be backing him." So you've always had that at games, especially at Highbury, but you've never really had these kind of journalistic fans. They've always been there. Don't get me wrong. We've always had our celebrity fans at the football club, but at the time, in the sort of the 80s, 90s, and the early noughties, there wasn't so much suspicion or derision towards celebrity fans as they are now. Because what it was is that you always, when you're younger, you always felt, and before social media, you always felt made up that a celebrity supported your club. It was something to boast about as well. That a celebrity supports club. Now you're a bit suspicious of them, because everyone seems to be an Arsenal fan, and sometimes you doubt whether they're true to the club or not. And I think social media's got a lot to answer for. For instance, the people that you see on certain channels, especially the main one, they wouldn't have lasted in the 80s. There's no way they would have lasted with the way they went on. It wouldn't have happened. Especially the North Bank in the 80s was a very tough breeding ground for a fan. In fact, it was so funny, because when you're in a crowd, because we were so packed together, you used to feel something hot on your leg, and you thought that someone dropped their Bovril, but really what they did is that those guys couldn't get to the toilet, and they wouldn't miss the action. Sometimes they'll piss in your leg, and that's happened to quite a few people. Has happened to it. And I know I felt something hot on me trainers during the matches, and these are true in the definitely North, especially when it was a big games. It's packed. Another thing as well you got to remember was about Highbury. It wasn't always packed to the rafters before the Premier League. There were times when I've been to night games, when there's only about a 60,000 stadium. There's only about 35. In fact, in the 80s, if we got about 48,000, 49,000, we did well. It was only after, I think, we started to get the 50s again. In about 1987, when Liverpool played. Do you know when Liverpool had that great side in '88 with Johnny Barnes, Peter Beardsley, and Johnny Aldridge? I remember the first game of the season, 87-88, we got 54,000. And then when us Liverpool were vying for the championship, there was always about 50,000 plus. But I remember North London derby going to North Arsenal Tottenham, when the 60,000 stadium, we had 48,000. You know what I mean? I remember when we played Chelsea in '84, they brought 25,000 fans from all the way from West London. They filled the North Bank, and you had to let them in. And that's probably when we did get the 50s, but that was mainly because of Chelsea. But one thing I liked about, the old Hybrid before the Premiership, before Walseta, obviously before Hillsborough, is that whenever we played Spurs, they had the whole North Bank, and it felt like a cup final, a North London Derby cup final. And hence, when we went to White Hart Lane, they gave us the whole of the whole of the like the South Stand. Stand. It was all of ours. So that's what I do miss about football prior to the Premiership and prior to all seaters, that there were some characters and decent characters, and there was after a match you go and have a discussion in the concourse or go to the pub or to go home and talk about it. Now there's no need for it. Social media's changed the way fans are for a long time, and most of the fans who still go to the Premiership, the Emirates, who old school Highbury, they wouldn't know anything about AFTV. They wouldn't know about a lot of the YouTube channels. They're still tradition. They still watch the club in a very traditional way. They only get seen clips of AFTV. They went, what's all that? And very complimentary of it, because I think old school fans on the whole want to be positive. They want the club to be put in a great light, i.e. no embarrassment, no people trying to act up to get views. They don't like that, old school fans. They hate it.
Yeah. Do you think the quality of Arsenal fan in them years, from them years since now, has dropped quite significantly?
What's that?
Do you think the general quality of the Arsenal fan, like you was just saying a second ago, that in the North Bank, it's sort of quite tough, sort of where I'm sort of sitting, but it's all changed now. Do you think over them years, the times when you're saying it was sort of tough in that sort of stadium, especially that
it has changed. He has changed, but that's a lot to do with the club, isn't it? Because right now they police a lot of things you can say, but you do say at the heat of the moment. So if you go to a home game now, and you should know that yourself, at half time they always say, "See it, say it, report it."
Yeah,
there was none of that in the 80s. See it, say it, report it. We policed ourselves. If a fan was out of order, we dealt with ourselves. We didn't try to get him banged. He was dealt with. She was dealt with. Whoever it is, they were dealt with, and they will taught such a lesson they'll never try it again. But now you have a situation where you see other fans try to get people to lose their memberships. They don't realise that for a lot of fans, and Ty is one of them, because remember Ty, I grew up in the same era as Ty, and we went to the same play centres in North London.
Oh, really? Yeah.
North Islington. So I grew up in Finsbury Park, on the outskirts of Finsbury Park, Holloway, and Ty is from Archway, Hornsey Rise. So we as primary schools would have played sport against each other, and we would have gone to the same play centres. Ty is Arsenal through and through.
Tell what you like about him. He is Arsenal. He loves that club.
Yeah, but the thing is, he's Arsenal through and through. But in the 80s, there was loads of ties. There's loads of ties. We used to boast about everything. If we weren't winning trophies, we used to, believe it or not, getting in Europe was like a trophy for Arsenal fans, because we used to have that kind of banter with Tottenham fans. Like, because they in the 80s they were slightly more successful than us. They used to boast about playing in Europe because Liverpool was so successful. Like, they just dominated the Championship. And if it weren't Liverpool in the mid 80s, it was Everton. Arsenal. If you told me when I first started going to Arsenal, and when I first fell in love with the Arsenal Football Club in 1980, when I was 8, obviously I was supportive. Obviously, you're told to support the club, but you fall in love with it out of your own esteem. You know what I mean? You have to have a moment when you fall in love with the club. Well, that time Liverpool were winning everything. If you think about Sir Alex Ferguson's Man United and Pep Guardiola's Man City, that Liverpool side under Bob Paisley is better. Was better than Pep Guardiola's Man City side. It was better than Sir Alex Ferguson's side, and it won European Cups as well.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah,
I'm not talking about the Champions League. I'm talking about the European Cup when it was the European Cup.
Yeah, the winners of their leagues. Yeah,
winners of their leagues,
proper.
and they supplement, and Nottingham Forest, they won 2 European Cups in like 1979, 1980, and Aston Villa won a European Cup. So there was a time when English clubs, from about 1977 to 1982, an English club won the European Cup every season. So if you switched at the end of the season, you switched on either the BBC or the ITV, they had a live European Cup final, and an English team not only got to the final, they won it.
Yeah.
So you think 1977, 1978, 79, 80, 81, and 82, an English side won the European Cup. But the English national side, well, there were times when the English national side didn't qualify for the World Cup in 78. And they were terrible in the Euros in 1980, and they weren't great in 1982. But their club sides were the best in Europe.
Absolutely
Then
dominated.
Heysel came along, and then we all got banged.
Yeah. Ken, just here's an interesting big up Dow as well. If no one already knows, Dow Oregon Goons got his own channel. Give him a like and subscribe. And as well, if you haven't already, give us a like and subscribe here. It's always greatly appreciated. But it's a question for you, Ken. That Legend Dow has asked. What do the fans at the Emirates really think about Odegaard as our captain? I'll let you go, and then I'll have a little answer as well.
You know what? They're quite surprised at the captain, because when you look at Arsenal captains, and the older fans who are a bit outside of me, Brighton Flat McClintock, a centre half, big tough guy, and obviously we're all brought up from Tony Adams, and then after Tony Adams, we had Patrick Vieira, and then after that, if you don't mind me saying, it became like the superstars. The player was the best. I think that happened with Arsene Wenger. When after Vieira, I think European managers, dare I say it, and I say it with respect, but it's factual. If you're seen to be the best player in the team or the biggest name, you automatically get the captaincy. And I think it's from a PR point of view. It doesn't mean you're a leader. Like Odegaard gets injured. Who's the captain? Bukayo Saka. No, sorry. Does he look like captain material? I beg to differ. Is Martin Odegaard captain material? I beg to differ. A lot of fans, we just got used to that sort of thing. Maybe the modern era doesn't have time for people like Roy Keane as a captain.
Do you know what I think? Do you know what I think on that, Ken? I actually think, since obviously we had Tony for such a long time as captain, and then we had Patrick, didn't we, for a very long time, until he left in the shirt that I'm wearing currently now in 2005. Look, we passed the armband to Thierry Henry. Look, I thought was all right, but I never really thought he was a captain. He wasn't a captain just like Tony and Patrick. And then, yeah, do you know what I mean? And then it filtered down to Fabregas, and I sort of see some people, and it might be a generation thing.
I'm going to say something controversial. Sorry to cut in. I've got to say something controversial.
No, you do.
Whether you like it or not, whatever you think of him as a player, or whether you think of his loyalty towards Arsenal, William Gallas was in that sort of mould of being a sort of centre-half captain. And he did, because he won things at Chelsea, when he got the captaincy, I was very happy that he got the captaincy. How it turned out, I never really blamed William Gallas for Birmingham and how he went down and sat
sulking
down
on the pitch. Yeah.
I didn't kind of blame him, but what I would rather William Gallas had done is to get I'd rather William Gallas, rather than Salt, got Clichy by the throat and had a right go at him and point in his face, because Adams would have done that.
Yeah,
I know Frank McClintock would have done that, and that's what I really wanted, and I think that's where he lost a lot of respect, because they said, "Oh, he's not a captain. He's not a captain." And
to be fair, he didn't behave like a captain that day.
He didn't behave like a captain that day, but up until then, I thought he looked like he was a good captain. But as it transpired, we're in a situation where you had superstars who didn't listen to him, people like Nasri, who basically, Nasri's a snake. He was a snake. Yeah. He was a snake everywhere he went, and he's got this attitude. He's a sort of player that he's one of those modern players who thinks you cannot talk to him like that. And I thought, who do you think you are? The day he left the football club was the best day of my life, because you know, the fact that he didn't want to be here, good player as he is, I was glad to see a back of him. But you think about superstar captains, Robin Van Persie, was he really a captain? I bet the Giffer. Now, Mick Arteta, when he was captain, you know, when you think about the fact that he's turned out to be a manager, he was all right captain. Yeah, he had some sort of leadership qualities. Fabregas, no captain.
No.
No
Why do
captain.
I always hear, Kenny, that I always see people say when they mention about good Arsenal, dare I say great, I've even heard this in there,
Yeah.
but I'm talking about Fabregas and putting him in that line. I always think, what
Fabregas,
on
no way.
earth
Well,
are you on
how
about?
can you be a captain when the last game of the season, in when we played Fulham away in 2011, you were at the Spanish Grand Prix instead of being with your teammates?
Yeah.
And then as Arsenal captain, you were engineering a move. Don't get me wrong, Vieira tried to engineer a few moves anyway out of the football club, but you did a different thing. You engineered a move to Barcelona twice, and then when you got close to getting your own way, you refused to train. You refused to appear in any of the PR videos. You refused to appear in the team photo. Now, many club players, like Nasri, despite the fact you slag Nasri, we slag him off. That season before he went to Man City, he played against Liverpool. He played games for Arsenal. Then he buggered off to City. But Cesc Fabregas, I don't see why people don't call Cesc Fabregas to that. That's why I haven't got him.
Madness, Ken.
I'll never forgive him. And then, you know, the silliness about how Arsene Wenger didn't want him and everything. Well, if you Cesc Fabregas, I wish Cesc Fabregas would just come out and just admit that Jose Mourinho approached him. He said he's Arsenal got an option in him, but if you're at Arsenal, who basically at the time were in the middle of their 9-year trophy drought, not quite finished it, but they were in the middle of it, and you had a team like Chelsea that with Abramovich's money. And, you know, that's a club where players like Frank Lampard, John Terry, who was still there, and Drogba played, and they won big trophies, including the Champions League. Where would you go? You wouldn't come to Arsenal, go to Chelsea. So why can't you come out and just say that was my preference? And I respect him.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, Vic makes a pretty good point here as well, and I'll comment on this one. One thing I definitely noticed that the positive energy and great atmosphere of the last 2 seasons has gone at the Emirates Stadium this season. It feels as if many fans have lost hope. Plus, footy is boring. I mean, again, bruv, I'm almost like Arsenal answered the question there, man. 2 years ago, you know, we'd sort of finished 5th, lost that top 4 race to Spurs. And then it was almost a surprise, wasn't it? But that we were sort of at the top, but we were actually playing really good football. It was a football that we all resonated with. It almost just took us back 20 years, didn't it, to when we used to rip teams apart. And we were ripping teams apart, weren't we, Ken?
100%.
We were ripping teams apart. What's happened?
Well, I'll tell you, I think what's happened is the crowd's got flat. I think the players are flat because when you've seen teams that finish second and they've never recovered from it, and that's when they've been in one title race. When you've been in 2 title races consecutively, where the team that your competitor has pinched the title from you twice, the same team has pinched it from you. I don't know. I can only talk from as an amateur psychologist. There's no way, in my opinion, that you're not going to be affected. The players are affected. The crowd are affected. The crowd are flat. You know, there's an acceptance from Arsenal fans that we'll never win the title. You know, because City are this formidable, immovable beast. Some fans are hoping that City get punished for those 115 charges because they think that they may take a few titles off City and give it to us. Or some people think, they'll feel vindicated because, Arsenal won the title anyway because they lost the title because City cheated. So there's some fans who think like that, but there's other fans who are just flat because the biggest conundrum, the biggest fly in the ointment, and biggest pain in the arse for Arsenal was Liverpool. But Arsenal fans, pundits say, Arsenal are a better team than Liverpool. They seem to forget before Arsenal had their renaissance. in terms of challenge for the league. It was Liverpool challenging Man City. It was Liverpool won the league in 2020. It was Liverpool won the Champions League, and Liverpool actually beat the 3 Champions League finals.
Yeah,
and they've won cups and been in major finals. So
they've won the lot, Ken.
They've won the lot. Yet
Yeah.
A team that's up and coming is seen as a more superior entity in Liverpool on the fact that they've been in 2 titles. They've finished second City consecutively. But the fact is, how can you write off Liverpool when they got a spine of Alisson in goal? Plus, if Alisson don't play, they've got the best number 2 in the world in Callagher.
Yeah.
Then they got Trent Alexander-Arnold, who is top class. They got Van Dijk, who many think is the best defender in the Premiership, not Saliba. And then you've got Mo Salah. You've got Mo Salah, who still is the best forward in the country.
Yeah, he can win a game like that, Ken.
Alongside Erling Haaland, he's still the best player. And then you've got the players who can come off the bench and score goals. How can Arsenal fans not rate that Liverpool side and say, "Oh, we're going to turn against Arteta because anyone other than City can't win the league"? Now, I was saying, surely you would have turned on Arteta when things were dire during lockdown, or when he couldn't see the open goal of the Champions League qualification when Spurs pinched it from us when they had no right to. You know what I mean? And that's the thing. You know, some Arsenal fans are like that. The fact is that if Liverpool win the title and it's early days, they'll win it on merit. But any football fan, genuine football fan who knows the game inside out, will say, yeah, they won a title because they had the best defender in the league, which is the viewpoint of many people in football. They had Mo Salah, who's going to challenge for the Liverpool's top goals scorer in the Premiership, who is going to be a Liverpool legend alongside Ian Rush, Johnny Barnes, Kenny Dalglish, and Stevie G. I don't see why people write Liverpool off, and they've been in that position before, and those players are just as experienced as us in being in title races, but they got one bet, they won it.
Yeah.
So
there's not that much of a drop off, is there? Either with Van Dijks and your Alissons, who are aging, and Salahs, of course. That I think they've had
their best player this season.
Yeah,
This season. So, and Konate, coincidentally, is rivaling Saliba for the centre half position alongside that Upamecano for France. At the moment, Saliba's got the shirt, but before that, Konate had the shirt. So it's evens. But Arsenal fans don't want to hear it. I think with some Arsenal fans, they think that the whole world exists and ends in M5. And they feel that people like all of us in the chat and people like me, you, Jez, Lee, Northside, Matty, Ola, or Dow, all these people,
of the boys with their heads screwed on,
all the boys, and obviously Jez, most importantly as well. They generally believe that unless we're talking about Arsenal, unless we're praising Mikel Arteta, unless we're praising Saka and saying that Saka's the best player in the world and he's world class, that we should be talking about Arsenal. They generally believe that. And I heard a Spurs fan, and she goes on one of the other channels, sister channel.
I think I might know what you're on about. Yeah.
Yeah. And when she said when she talks about Arsenal fans, is saying, you're only allowed to talk about Arsenal unless you praise them. And that she was talking about how deluded our fans. I just fell off my chair. You got a point. You got a point. You only have to hear some of the interviews on the main channel, on the biggest fan channel out there, that you only have to hear them. I love Ty, and I do love. I'm still friends with Ty because the other day I got no beef with Ty. How can you hate How can you have beef with someone who grew up in the same area as you, grew up around you, went to the same not secondary school, same play centres as you as kids? I can't hate him. I've only got love for that guy. Got respect for him. I don't agree with much of what he says, but he is the epitome of the Arsenal fan who believes, although he hasn't got anything personal against any of us because he believes we should have our own opinion, but he genuinely believes that if a pundit or a TV presenter talks about Arsenal, they have to praise Arsenal Football Club. They have to praise the players, or they're not allowed to talk to them. You know, when you have to see his interviews, when he's directing it towards a player, for instance, Troy Deeney is called that. He's called that.
No cojones, isn't it?
Yeah, he's called that Brighton players because they try the hardest against Arsenal. Anyone who he feels hurts Arsenal, doesn't praise Arsenal in equal measure, is an enemy of the club.
Yeah, I'm sorry. There's got to be as a fan, yeah. You know, and I suppose, you know, that also what I'm about to say enables these top Gooners, but you should be able to have the right to say what you sort of got to say. But the thing is we would never shut down these top Gooners if they wasn't just so absolutely hammering on us toxic and sort of negative fans. And it's sort of one of the questions I wanted to ask you, which I'll jump in now. So if Arsenal continue this form, yeah, Ken, we win nothing. Yeah, let's just say hypothetically, we win nothing. We finish outside the top 4. Can you see Arsenal fans again fighting maybe amongst themselves, just like, do you remember them latter years of Wenger years when there was just such a horrendous divide?
They'll fight amongst themselves because if the majority of fans are back Mikel Arteta and generally believe that Mikel Arteta is the main to see it through, then what will happen is if we're vociferous in the stands and we call out the manager and call out the players, there is going to be someone who's going to say something and they're going to be aggressive because they've had a bit of drink. You're going to defend yourself. So it's 100% going to happen, but I don't think it's going to be that level of what it was like under Arsene Wenger, where it became personal to the extent that Arsenal fans were fighting amongst themselves. Arsenal fans were sending each other death threats, and that's factual. Arsenal fans were abusing other fans' families, including their kids and their missuses, and because of the viewpoint of Arsenal. But now, you get the feeling that with the stewards nowadays, they'll stamp out and throw people out, and I'm sure there'll be there's always going to be some sort of arsehole or grass are going to say, oh yeah, that guy in his seat, blah blah blah, is shouting and I want him thrown out. I mean, I think any fan that does that to another fan is the lowest of the low.
Yeah.
You think about this. You think about the prototype of a football fan. All football fans come in all shapes and sizes, by the way. Some can live in mansions. Some can live in council flats. Some can have 2 houses or 3 houses. Some can have kids. Some can work be a doctor, a lawyer, or a doctor, lawyer, and accountant, or the guy could be unemployed, or we could be someone who works for a local authority and works as a dustman or a caretaker. Yeah. They're all the same when they get into the stands. They're the same, but what the situation is that they express themselves differently, and you shouldn't have a situation where, well, basically, what I'm trying to say is, if you think you're going to go to football and you're not going to hear swearing, and you're not going to hear fans, like blowing their spleen, then go and watch another sport. Because at the end of the day, there's some fans who are married to this club. Their life is Arsenal Football Club, and we've got fans, and every club's got fans like that. And to have that guy thrown out, who's gone all over the world to support his club, and it's something that he lives for. He buys all the merchandise. He buys, he kicks out. He saves up, does overtime, go and watch us play. And because he's like I said something you that might upset, and it's nothing to do with you anyway. Disgrace. He's not even talking to you. You're trying to get them thrown out. You're the lowest of the low. And that's one thing I do for push against, and I don't like about modern Arsenal fans, is that there's no solidarity, no looking after each other. We're all selling each other out. It's like, you look at this referee. You know, don't get me wrong. Someone set him up to the extent that they just can't help. They just destroying his life, and people just thinking it's hilarious, and you know, get a sport, think it's a sporting spectacle, and I think it's something they can gossip and talk about or make shows about. But
yeah,
there's Arsenal fans who do that to a fellow Arsenal fan who do the same thing.
What's happened? But you didn't see that when you started going to the
No,
Arsenal.
you never saw that. It's
You
like,
didn't see that, did you?
there was one fan who was trying to get an Arsenal fan thrown out because he apparently made a sign, and he interpreted that as a sign against Son in the North London derby. Nothing conclusive, but he's trying to get the guy thrown out.
Yeah.
I mean, look what
What's
they did
that
to
all
Claude.
about, Ken? What's happened to people? What's happened, mate?
Look what Arsenal fans did to Claude. Look what Arsenal fans did to Claude.
Disgrace.
Fans. Spurs fans. There was your Spurs fan here and there. But look what they did to Claude.
What a shame. What a shame. I love listening to that, man.
You didn't even give him a chance to explain himself. All bets are off, and you went to the sponsors of his employers to get their sponsorships pulled, and then you went to the club that he lived for to try and get him banned. Nah.
Do you know what? That makes me feel fucking sick. Things like that.
Yeah.
That someone's life is that shit that they have to go and do that to someone else's. And the quality of fan between Claude and them it was proper.
But let me frame. Everyone was complicit. Every Arsenal fan on social media, especially Twitter, was complicit. They weren't talking about it. They were condemning him, and then condemning the channel, and then trying to get him with the club. I don't know who they are. All the big Arsenal fans who claim to be nice people were doing that to him. I think this is abhorrent. And the thing about it is that they were using him because they had a beef with the channel. They didn't care about his life. They didn't care about whether he was guilty or innocent. It's because the channel put out a video about racism in football, about racism towards fans going in the 80s, and they interviewed Cass Pennant, and then he intimated, whether he meant it or not, I doubt if he meant it, but all he said was, he said that his dad wouldn't go to Arsenal because he felt that he wouldn't feel welcome. His dad wouldn't go to football. Didn't say anything about Arsenal. Wouldn't go to football because he felt he wouldn't welcome. And he said that he didn't go to football because his dad wouldn't let him go because there could be racial incidents in football. That's all he said. But they took it the wrong way, and they said, well, Arsenal. They took it as saying that Arsenal's a racist club when it's not. We know that. I grew up in the 80s. And I'm born in 1972. I know for a fact Arsenal's never like that. If you went to Andover Estate, most of the fans used to go to the ways were people from all races. There were West Indians, there were Africans, and of course there were Irish, there were Greek Cypriots, there were English, there were Scots. You know, all Londoners who had, you know, like I said, blood, you know, Irish blood, West Indian blood, African blood, Scottish blood, Greek Cypriot blood, Turkish blood, and English, but we're all Londoners. That was Arsenal Football Club. I grew up in the 80s I never thought that. And then I grew up with worshipping players like Chris White, Blackpool player, and Raphael Mead, who lived round the corner from me and was best friends with my next door neighbour, and they went to secondary school. So there's no way I would have said that, and there's no way that I would have done an interview with Cass Pennant because of Cass. You know what Cass Pennant what was involved with the Arsenal fan in '82. So we policed that. Arsenal policed itself. So there's no way I felt like that. I didn't feel unsafe going to Arsenal. And there's loads of black fans who are going to the ACs, who lived in Andover Estate or lived in Hackney or Archway, all those areas, or some lived in northwest London, came from the South London. They never felt uncomfortable watching Arsenal. It was just like, so I can understand their anger, but to use that as a way to get revenge against the channel by hurting Claude, that was wrong, all wrong, and it was bad,
terrible, mate.
And
horrendous.
The thing is that you wouldn't stop. You kept on beating him.
Choose a superlative, Ken. Disgusting, disgraceful, embarrassing, shameful.
They wouldn't let it go.
Terrible.
They wouldn't let it go.
Horrendous.
But that's the thing, and that's why I push back against. That's why I worry about the modern fan. The modern fan doesn't have any solidarity. I mean, because it wasn't just when you look about solidarity of football. It's not about hugging each other when a goal goes in. It's about having each other's back. Like
yeah.
I've been brought up. Like for instance, you look at what happened Ty at Chelsea Way, and when Ty was coming out of the grounds, Chelsea fans surrounded him. They went to Robbie first. They went to Robbie first. We saw video. They went to Robbie first, and then they went to Ty, and one guy stole his cap. I got his cap back, and I pushed back against the fans because I was always brought up that if an Arsenal fan's in trouble against an opposition fan, you get in there and help out. Now I turn me back. I'm not interested because there's not a level playing field amongst fans now. There's no solidarity. Cancel culture is basically like the norm, even amongst your own. So there's no way I'm going to be doing that because this is not the fan base I thought it was.
Mate, I think that pretty much even though you've already sort of answered it anyway, maybe Kai jumped in the building late. Big up, Kai. Big up for being here, bruv. Are you still friends with Ty from AFTV? I mean, I think,
100%. So, as I said before, out of all the people on the channel, he's the biggest Gooner there. Biggest Gooner. He reminds me of the caretaker around our estate called Ernie. I think it was Bill. He's Bill. It was called Bill, and our estate. And he went all over watching Arsenal. He went to women's, he went to reserves, and he went to men's. He went all over the country watching Arsenal. Ty is Bill. But if you go on Arsenal Football Club and old school fans, there's a lot of people. Remember, there used to be this guy going on AFTV, blonde hair. I think he's got learning difficulties, but he used to go on AFTV. Every game I go to, home and away, cup final, he's there. He's one of those fans who are old school, just go and watch Arsenal, Arsenal, no matter what. And I think there has to be room for people like that. I think AFTV done well in having Ty, but I think where they go wrong is that they don't seem to want old school fans. They seem to want, play to their audience, which is a very young audience, urban audience, and their audience is mainly fans from abroad, fans who, hence the fact they're going on tour to, they've been on tour to Nigeria, Ghana, and they go to Sierra Leone. And respect to them because that's where the fan base are. But maybe they shouldn't forget, and they should reach out to old school fans as well. Now they may be told to go and take a running jump because they've neglected them for too long, but I think that's what they should. I think that's where it misses out. But I look at it this way: if they neglect the old school fans, then that's an opportunity for other new channels to come up and find their audience and take the audience that they left behind.
No, quite right. Absolute facts, mate. I'm just going to slightly sort of move it over to a little bit of Mikel Arteta now. But people watching, if you haven't already, drop a like, drop a sub to the channel. Big up, always respect.
Yeah, Vic's right. At this point, Vic's right.
Well, you can't.
You can't.
Going to jump on that.
We come from. We all got different viewpoints, and it's probably better and more honest to say this is what I think. And this is what my mate thinks, but there may be other people who feel differently. but they won't do that because that what they're selling is the whole fan base, and they're representative of the whole fan base.
Yeah. No. That's absolute facts. Yeah, that's sort of why I left that up there. I was gonna mention with Vic, 'cause he's coming out with some comments, and there are a couple of starred sort of comments getting towards the end. I know we're pushing the 3/4 of an hour. I'm conscious of your time, so I'll wrap up in about 15 or so minutes. I'll go around sort of hour, but there's a couple more questions I sort of want to ask you, Ken.
Yeah.
While you're here, my man. So Mikel Arteta, yeah. Do you think that he's sort of angling for the type of power that Arsene Wenger had at the club in them sort of years? Because I think the narcissist Mikel, he is power starving. I think he's got the final say on the vast majority of everything, and it's worrying me that the new, the head director, sporting director, when whoever he may be comes in, Mikel's going to have a say on it, and that just means it's just another Mikel yes man. What do you reckon on his power surge, Mikel Arteta? Do you reckon he's a bit starving for it, or
it's always a norm, always a norm? He's not the first manager to do that. Rafa Benitez at Liverpool in his last season wanted complete control of football affairs. He got it that season. He got the sack because Liverpool didn't get the Champions League. They finished 7th that season. So it didn't work out for Rafa in that. But for a manager like Mikel Arteta, of course he's going to want complete control, because the simple reason is that a lot of managers, they know 9 out of 10 times, for instance, there's the job I have is a permanent job. The job that you have is a permanent job. But there are some jobs where it's a temporary job, and you work within that contract. Well, football management and the football players are based as a temporary job, and they can extend your contract or they cannot renew your contract. And I think in terms of Mikel Arteta, you always hear them on a manager, and used to hear it managers in the 80s who talk about, oh, we're not giving money, we're not giving control. This player, I was giving this player, and he's not a player I want. So he's no different to a lot of managers. You're going to find that Amorim, once he gets his foot under the table and if he starts getting success, he's going to want the same thing. He's not going to want to be the head coach. He's going to want to have complete control because, a lot of managers have been burnt. Owners and directors of football advisors who don't know anything about football may have a vested interest towards a mate who wants their player to get a contract at a football club, so they get this player and force him on you. So that's why a lot of managers want control. With Mikel Arteta, 100%. He's managed to exercise a lot of control at the football club. He's been given a lot of money as well, and he's been given the players he wants, and it's his team. Of course, people like me and you went, well, he's happy to take the plaudits if we play well, or if, a lot of fans see a success, us finishing second to Man City. So he's happy to take those plaudits. But when it comes to the criticism, he's never accountable. He's never accountable. And
that's the worrying thing, mate. You have to have accountability. No matter what your job is, no matter what level in your job it is, whether you're starting at the very, very, very bottom or you've worked your way to the very, very, very top, you have to have accountability. If you haven't, then there's none. There's none. Zero.
And the reason why isn't is because simple reason is that, he's got a very, very high approval rating. A very high approval rating amongst Arsenal fans. Their argument is, I've heard one guy say that Arsenal, the money that Arsenal are paying was catch-up money. There was a show where a fan called the money we're spending on certain players is catch-up money, to catch up just to compete with City, I think he meant. There's some Arsenal fans who think that the club was in such a really bad state, the dress was rotten, and he's turned the club around to the extent that we're now respected and we're now competing for the title and we're now challenging. And he gets a lot of credit for that, not just from the board. He gets a lot of credit from that from the pundits and high-profile fans and fans of Mikel. So that's the situation. you know, we lose a few games, and a lot of fans haven't actually gone publicly who want Mikel out to say we want him replaced. But these fans who are behind Mikel, they preempt what they think we're going to say, and they go on Twitter. He goes, "Oh, any Arsenal fan who says Mikel should be sacked, they either use swear words or they think that we need to see a doctor."
Yeah,
and then that's about 3,000 views on that tweet, and about 300 likes, and about probably 15 more follows on their account for that comment. And that's
what's
all they're
all
doing
about,
it for.
innit? Yeah, for
They're
them.
preempting
Yeah,
the fact.
exactly.
But you know, when we lost against Bournemouth, I didn't see many people calling for Mikel to be removed because at the end of the day, the people like myself who want him replaced I'm not going to repeat ourselves. We're not going to change our position, but we're not always going to say it off feet. We're just going to think, well, his time is up. But there is going to be a time where, you know, if he doesn't win trophies and he's been at the club for a certain amount of time, that he will fall on his sword. He will, you know, have to sort of think again. The club won't sack him if he keeps on getting top four, but he's going to have to come to the conclusion that he's here to win trophies. He may leave himself. He may get a lucrative position. Someone may offer him a job. He's still highly thought of at Man City. That's a fact. You know, he could, for all we know, he could be using Arsenal as a stepping stone or his apprenticeship for the big job. Not everyone in football thinks Arsenal are the third biggest club in the country. They are factually, but there's a lot of people in football that thinks Man City is a better gig than Arsenal. Maybe Mikel thinks they're a better gig.
Yeah. No, facts, man. Listen, just one of the last sort of like questions. For me, Ken, I find it quite funny, that normal fans like me, definitely like you, and all these fantastic people in the chat that watching, commenting, and also watching on catch up. We get labelled as toxic and negative. They're two words that have just been synonymous with the type of fans that we are, apparently. When in actual fact, I think the bubble of delusion Mikel has created is significantly worse. Given the money, the effort over the years, and the time for you, Kenny, do you feel like you get the respect that you deserve from Arsenal fans, or do you just not give a shit?
Look, you know what the situation? Don't bother with them because simple reason is that first and foremost, they're Spurs fans and they're getting toxic. They're Spurs fans who've looked at the football that's getting played on the big Ange, and some are thinking, or openly saying, no, we're not happy. They're called toxic. So you're always going to get toxic because, you know, people who are positive beings don't want someone to tell them that they're wrong. They don't want someone to say, well, no, I'm not happy here. I want to change. I'm not settling for that. And it's because they've settled for it. But in terms of, like, as I said before, anything, I've accepted a long time ago there's no solidarity amongst Arsenal fans. Twitter is a waste of time.
Yeah,
you know, Twitter.
vulgar.
I see. I've heard that there's
Vulgar.
a German club called St. Pauli who've left Twitter to go to another website because they think Twitter is. They think that they don't want Twitter. They think Twitter is going to have an influence on upcoming German elections. Obviously, with Elon Musk, he tried to influence the British elections, failed miserably, but he managed to use his might to influence the American elections. But if you go on Arsenal Twitter now, you're not going to hear about Arsenal. You're not going to hear Arsenal opinion unless it's positive. And the people you think are going to talk about football, they're more interested in what's on GB News. They're more interested in Donald Trump. They're more interested in how much they hate Keir Starmer. You're not interested in football. Yeah. They've used their, in fact, a lot of them are using it to defend their beliefs in the situation abroad in the Middle East. So where do I go for football? That's why I stay on Instagram. Twitter's changed. Since lockdown, Arsenal Twitter has just changed, where it's just not about football no more. It's about,
sadly,
about your right of free speech, and for them, they think that supersedes anything else, and that the football becomes less important. But yet, I followed you because of your football. You've got followers on the back of on the fact that you're a football fan and you're seen as a respected old school Arsenal fan. Yet none of your content on Twitter is about football. It's about your political beliefs.
Separate them, isn't it?
Yeah, but
This is football, isn't it?
The genie's out of the bottle. The genie's out of the bottle. What's happened in the last 4 years has affected people from all over the world, and there's been secondary issues where you can't go back to being a football fan because you're so invested on world events and the fact that people listening to you. I mean, people like Matt Letizia got a lot to answer for. People like him and Piers Morgan who've managed to influence decent football fans away from the football onto world events of their choosing, and I deserve my free speech merchants. That's it. The football's irrelevant to those people.
Yeah, no, facts. Well, look, I'm going to take a couple of star comments before we wrap up, Ken. So I'm looking at the time. We're knocking on the door, mate. This one's from Joe. Yeah, while you said Twitter, I thought we'll start with this one. And big up Joe as well. Respect, man. One of the OGs in my chat. Question for Aaron and Kenny. Seen some top Gooners on Twitter saying drop party for Mourinho against Forest. Do you agree or not? This is an easy one, I think.
They're talking absolute rubbish. Rubbish.
Yeah.
The rubbish that comes out of their mouth. And the thing about it is that you can see how fake their analyses are. When Declan Rice was in the team alongside Odegaard and Havertz, they came up all sorts of analyses and tactical plans praising the manager. And then when it didn't work, and then when the manager decided to bring Thomas Partey into the team, they're all praising the manager and coming out with all tactical analysis and why it works with Declan Rice and Partey and Odegaard. They're absolute morons. They think that the way they think that Declan Rice is a number 6 when he's not. They think that Mourinho is a number 8 and that we're going to replicate how we played when Grant Xhaka inside, and that they can release Martinelli, Lord Martinelli, the player who basically, couldn't catch a cold now. It's all nostalgic. It's all rubbish. They're entitled to their opinions, and I'm entitled to say they're talking rubbish from a footballing point of view because Declan Rice played his best football last season, especially after Dubai, as a number 8. He was creating chances as a number 8. He was scoring goals as a number 8.
What's happened though, Ken? Because I'm sort of conflicted. Sometimes I agree with you on the Declan Rice position. Some sort of times I don't. I'm really on the fence. But it's hard to disagree with what you're saying. In the 8, he was fantastic. So did we unlock him? And he was fantastic in number 8. And now some form of tactic that Mikel Arteta has implemented has sort of held him back. What's gone on with him this year?
What's gone on with him is 2 reasons.
Yes.
2 things. One, Euros.
It's not out.
Players who struggle in the Euros physically. 2, the disappointment of not winning another European final for his country. That's hit him. And then before that, finishing second to Man City, no trophy. That's hit him. So his form's going to take a risk. Plus, I did say at the beginning of the season, with the amount of games we're playing, with a sort of an extended Champions League, where it's actually a league, it's actually a free-for-all, really, rather than the group stage. It's a league, a genuine league, where everyone's got everyone's points, and basically, that's going to have a physical effect on our players. People say, "Oh, international break. Oh, Saka." No, it's not the international break. It's the fact that we're playing a game every 2 or 3 days. The fact that with the amount of increased games of the Champions League, every game has got something on it. You have to play with the same intensity in the Champions League and play your best players. You can't rate, and as you do in the league. But the problem is, with the amount of games, Mikel Arteta won't rotate. So it's no wonder that Declan Rice has got an injury. Probably had an injury coming through the Euros. But because Mikel Arteta wants to win football matches, he's playing, and he's not the only manager that does it. Every manager does it. You see players who play through injections. In fact, it's a badge of honour now with football that if a manager respects you more, an international manager respects you even more if you play through injury, because you're showing up for the team. That as long, to take the injection, give us your all, and then we may give you a rest. Oh no, we can't give you a rest because we've got this another big game. And then you have a situation with Benjamin White, where Benjamin White says, no more. My career. I need the surgery now. And I think that's the same with Rice. I saw in the warm-up, me and Dan Potts were watching Declan Rice in the warm-up. And I could tell you categorically, he didn't look right in the warm-up before the Chelsea game. He was passing the ball, reluctant to have shots. And then when he shot with his M-step. And then everyone said, he's fine. I said, all right. Let's see when he gets tackled. I said, all right. And they conceded at that point. Got tackled. What happened? What was his delivery like in set pieces? You tell me. You know what I mean?
No, but he ain't been on the ball at all with the set pieces, Rice. I don't think. Not like he was last season. It was almost a revelation, wasn't it?
But it's not just Rice's fault. Remember, Saka can take set pieces as well.
Yeah.
We've been worked us out. The 8 teams that we've outweighed on set pieces are not Tottenham, who can't even defend. Man City, who play attacking football to the extent that they believe they've got better players than everyone else, and Liverpool, where we caught Liverpool out with that set piece from Declan Rice. You look at the goals we scored. Who took the corner against Tottenham? Saka. Who took the corner against Man City? Saka. Declan Rice. And he won assists from a set piece this season.
Yeah.
Teams working us out.
Yeah, facts. Talking about our attacking sort of bit, there's one more question from Penny Pinchers. Big up, fella. I know you sent this question a long time ago. I tried sort of giving a little symbol to say I've starred it, but we'll move. Legit question. Why would any decent striker want to join Arsenal when they see the anti-attacking football Mikel Arteta plays, which is dead, and I agree with it.
Well, the thing about it is Arsenal's still a good gig in it. People are going to want to join Arsenal now because for some reason, people want to work with Mikel Arteta until they get to know him. And he's seen as this upcoming boss. But most importantly, another thing as well, people want Champions League football. They know that there's a vacancy there. They know Arsenal need a striker. They know that if they go and run a form and they impress Mikel, they know the shirt's theirs for as long as Mikel's there. They know there's going to be no challenge.
And they've been paid well, Ken. Very well. Very well.
Early knows because of his goalkeeper's prowess. Who's going to take his shot off him? And that's the situation in Arsenal. People will want to go there because they know they're going to get games because Arsenal do need a striker. But there's the other side where people think, Mikel and strikers. I don't want to press. I don't, you know what I mean? I want to play in a shoulder defender. I want someone like Saka to create chances for me. I want to be able to run from deep, i.e. Gooners, and then get and make goals for myself. Will I be able to play like I did? Will I be able to play like I do for Sporting Lisbon at Arsenal? Yeah. Good question, I haven't heard any evidence of Mikel Arteta making any approaches for Gooners. All we hear is speculation, but the hard evidence was Sesko.
Yeah. And look what that happened. He shut us down very early on. Yeah.
And Vlahovic, but no leaks from the club. No leaks from the club regarding any other striker other than Sesko and Vlahovic.
Yeah. Just the last question. It comes from Vic. Big up, Vic, by the way. Is another OG in the chat. I've got a lot of time for this gentleman. Kenny, what was your first ever live game? Can I ask? Mine was Kiev at Wembley. At first, Highbury was Vid Charlton 5-3. I remember that one. That was when. What was his
Uh,
name? Was it
uh, uh,
where we
my,
brought Jens Lehmann out? What's his bloody name? Was
well,
that one
I tell you,
no,
my first like,
I'm thinking of
my
Middlesbrough.
first,
Sorry.
my mum tells me my first ever live Arsenal game was when I was a kid. I don't remember it because we used to live around the corner, and she told me. Yeah, but the first Arsenal game I remember was actually a reserve game, the football combination games in 1982.
Yeah.
But but I was going to games before then, anyway. But yeah, it was a football combination game. But the first team game I remember, going to was I remember going to on my own where I paid for myself because I was going. I was going before with family, friends, neighbours. But when I actually went on my own at the age of 12, without any supervision, was Watford, 1984, December the 17th, 1984. It was Watford at home. We won. It was 1-1 draw. We scored a penalty. Well, Ian Allison missed a penalty. It was saved by Tony Coton, and he put in a rebound. And then in the last few minutes, Les Taylor scored for Watford. But the reason why I remember it is because the guy I was going with, who I've been with for a fire, but I should have realised then that he wasn't the person I really want to go football with. He was going, "Oh, can we leave early? Because I don't want to get caught in the crowds. I've got to go home." They wanted to leave early, and I thought, no. I thought, you know what? After that, I thought I'm never going to football with that guy again. And believe it or not, we went to a few games after that. But after that, I just thought, you know what? Lose this lad. I'll go on my own. And then the adults, we started going again. And he got a bit better, but I think he stopped going. But I carried on going. But yeah, I do remember that game because, it was Watford. It was just before Christmas. And Don Howe was the manager. Tommy Caton was at centre half with Dave O'Leary. We had Kenny Sampson, captain at left back, and at right back we had Viv Anderson playing, and Charlie Nicholas played that day.
Champagne Charles, yeah.
Well, I remember all the guys. Well, not me, but most of the guys had a Charlie Nicholas hairstyle because he used to have like a mullet, and all the kids at school used to want a Charlie Nicholas haircut. I remember his first game when I went with an adult when we played Luton Town. He didn't score, but we beat Luton Town 2-1. But yeah, everyone wanted Charlie Nicholas haircut.
One of my he's not in the chat, and I'll wrap up just after I say this. But he's not in the chat. He'll be watching on catch up. But one of my very, very, very best friends. Some people in the chat might have seen him in there. Lee Sharp. His name is Lee Nicholas Sharp, after Charlie Nicholas.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and is that same generation as you, mate? Literally, yeah. Everyone was all about it.
Charlie Nicholas was the Mesut Ozil of the 1980s. He was one of those players that, everyone idolised him. Everyone wanted him to do well because his last season when he came to us from Celtic, he scored about 60 goals. 60 goals for Celtic. So we thought that, he had a choice of clubs to go to. He had a choice to go to Spurs, Man United, and Arsenal. He chose Arsenal. We thought, God, we're going to win cups now with Charlie Nicholas. And Charlie Nicholas was a bit like Peter Marinello, where he came with a bit of fanfare from Scotland, but he was inconsistent. But he scored brilliant goals, but he wasn't consistent enough. He didn't get us to 20 goals we thought he would get. But he was one of those players where when it was his day, it was off the scale. And he always used to score against Spurs. He used to always score against Spurs. So we loved him for that. And obviously, our first type cup in 8 years, he scored both goals against Liverpool in 1987. So Charlie Nicholas is always going to be up there as a top player, because in the 80s, when Arsenal weren't much, he was like a superstar. You think about, Mesut Ozil, then think about Charlie Nicholas, Just, you know what I mean? Spurs fans hated him, obviously, but Charlie Nicholas, yeah, stylish. He was always like shining. He always like, you know, looked the part, had the hair, you know, had the threads. He always had the cool trousers, and he's always at the nightclubs. He was at the nightclubs around Stringfellows and everything.
Champagne Charlie, yeah. Wonder where he got the name from.
Yeah, he actually used to live in Highgate. So yeah.
Yeah. I've done a couple of jobs around
all the players lived in Hertfordshire, you know, around, you know, London Colney, Harpington, St Albans, those sort of areas. Is well green.
Watford-esque, that area, isn't it?
Yeah. He chose to live in London. He chose to live in the heart of London, the Highgate.
So a little bit, but Ken, I'm going to wrap it up there because I've looked at the time. I'm very conscious of it. I know you've got some international football which you love to watch. But listen, mate, thank you. Go on. I'll let you.
You know, it's nice to talk about old times because, you know, it's nice to hear where Arsenal fans' journey started because, you know, there's fans who started in the noughties, and there's fans who go way back to the 1967, like Jez, and I go back to 1980 where I started going, but the game that I remember the most is Watford '84. But yeah, because I used to go to the football combination games. Des will remember that anyway. You know, the football combination games where we used to play, where the reserve players like Danny O'Shea, you know, we had Reece Wilmot was in goal, you know, reserves, and sometimes ref on me just playing reserves. Des will know all those players anyway. But Johnny started somewhere. And you know, the genie's out of the bottle. So I don't think you're going to see the solidarity amongst Arsenal fans as such, but there are going to be solidarity amongst people who are good people and people you've got a lot of time and care about. What Arsenal Twitter showed me, and Arsenal social media showed me, you can't be friends with everyone, but just make sure you're friends with the good people and good fans.
I don't surround myself with dickheads, which is why I've surrounded myself with an absolute legend like yourself. 100%. Ken, where can we find you, man?
You can find me at KennyKen1972 on Instagram. Yeah, because I just took the mickey out of Troy Deeney because he was slagging off Rashford. So I just asked Troy Deeney how many cups he's won. And I reminded Troy Deeney that the only cup final he got to, his team got thrashed 6-0 by City. So yeah, that's in my Instagram story if you're interested. Troy Deeney needs taking down a peg or two, I think, because he sees himself as a superstar. Actually, his story is actually admirable to come back from what he did and to turn his life around. Got a great respect for him, but sometimes you think, calm down, Troy.
Pipe down a little bit. Yeah. But now we're going to leave it there. I'm going to put the outro on now. But big up, man! An absolute pleasure to have you on. And if you haven't already, gents, give a video a like and subscribe. I cannot wait if you're up for it to have you on another time, Ken. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I'm sure it has been for people watching.
I'm not difficult to find. Remember, we're both season ticket holders.
I know where you are now, mate. And do you know what? At some stage again, very soon in the season, I'd love to pop down and say hello
have a chat. Hopefully, we're not slagging off Mikel Arteta because we're winning.
I hope so. That's what people don't really see, though, is it, mate? Do you know what I mean? We don't do this because we're miserable bastards. We do it because we're hurt and we're in pain, and we want Arsenal to win. If Mikel Arteta succeeds, we succeed, and so be it. Yeah. But listen, people, on the way out, Ken, big up, man. Always a pleasure.